And not only sides, but a story.
Yeah.
You have to pick a story. And the story makes you pick the side. Well, no. I mean, the thing is no. It's a shame that we have to pick between stories that force us into sides.
Yeah.
Because all these stories have the small good guys
Yeah.
and the rest of the evil hordes.
Should
Right.
any religious story actually create sides?
Wouldn't it be neat to find religious... Well, see, it's tricky. Because... Yeah. I'm reading a book just about that right now. It's called Life at the End of Us versus Them. One Christian guy trying to see if he can have a Christianity that eliminates us versus them.
Really?
Is
Yeah.
he a Christian?
Well, it sounds like it. I've only gotten through the first chapter.
And not through conversion.
Not through conversion. But he is, I'm assuming that he's going to be one of those progressive Christians who doesn't think that everybody should be a Christian anyway. Right? And I mean, because Christianity is certainly evolving, especially these days, going through an identity crisis.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to see where that leads.
Interesting. My guess is ultimately that, much like what you were saying earlier about evolution, the things that are able to survive are the things that do. The only thing that we're going to find that survives amongst most religions over a long period of time, if we haven't destroyed the earth by then, is this human aspect. These are the things that are constant. I don't know who it is that said, I think it was quoted by, said by Penn Jillette. It might have been somebody else, I'm not sure, but because I think Ricky Gervais also said the same thing. If you take all the religions of the world and wipe them from all existence, all memory, and you do the same thing with all scientific findings, and then wait, no religion would come back the exact same, but the scientific findings eventually would come back the same.
Yeah.
People would find a way to come to the same results scientifically, but not religiously. And I think that's fascinating. I think it's fascinating that the things that remain are the things that actually
Are the
things that work.
The things that work reliably
because
across the board.
Exactly.
Because the plane always flies.
The
plane always flies.
The things that work and the things that work best.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we're going to have to gravitate toward those things, whatever those things are, in order to keep surviving.
Yep.
We're going to have to throw out the fact that we're so hazardous to this planet if we want to be able to keep living on it.
Yeah.
As much as we wanted to just, write it in stone that we don't need to be that way, that we can keep doing things the way we're doing it, we're going to have to change the way we do things in order for things to keep going.
Yes.
And this is the fundamental of evolution, that if you want to be able to survive that predator, you have to be fortunate enough to be to have a genetic mutation that gives you those stronger legs or whatever, and then run like your life depends on it.
Yeah.
And if you want to be somebody who thinks that you don't need to change, that religion doesn't need to change, I think if religion were true, it would be able to change.
Yes, and I think that the religions that last the longest are the ones that experience change. And I think so. So like that. If all religions were wiped out, we would come up with completely new myths. I bet there would be a lot of commonalities.
Sure.
Because
because
we're still human.
We're gonna have the same types of issues.
Yeah. The same existential crises and fears and voids.
Not knowing what happens after death. Like there will be all kinds of different. They'll still address that same sort of issue for sure.
And they'll be different for every area, for every time, because every area and time is going to need a different thing. Even if I wouldn't be. Yeah. I have
a question. So, I don't know if you might have already talked about it or not. So, what led you to being atheist?
A non-profit organization.
Organization.
Basically, so when I... trying to think of how much we talked off camera.
Yeah.
Basically, when as I was growing up, as I was being a Christian, I was as much of a genuine Christian as I believe anybody could have been.
Mm-hmm.
I know myself. Other people don't know me.
Yeah.
To the extent that I know myself.
Yes.
Even though I get confused about myself. Even though...
You're still right there in your face.
Yes. I am the most certain of myself that anyone else could ever be.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know that what I did was as much of a genuine conversion to being a saved by grace through Christ believer Christian. And this is something that this is a script that I followed. I dotted the I's, I crossed the T's. I did more than what most people around me did. Most people I grew up with didn't go to Bible college, let alone 3 of them. Most people didn't teach the senior high class, which is what I did when I was like 19 or something, because our church had a split and there was a whole bunch of roles that needed to be filled. And it was the same with, I helped you lead the youth group, and I preached some as well, all when I was like around 20-ish.
Yeah.
And I really cared about these things. When I had these conversations with people in private, it was obvious to them that I cared about them.
Yeah.
And I tried to communicate things in such a way where I felt like it was making sense, because I knew that it didn't make sense to them.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to.
Yeah.
I wanted them to feel the way that I felt about it. I wanted them to be as convinced as I was. I didn't want to force it on them necessarily, but I felt compelled to
not advertise, but
maybe advocate for who I was, because sometimes the conversation started with just why I was the way I was, why I didn't do this or didn't do that, or why do I go to church, or you're one of those people, or whatever, because apparently we live in a secular country, which made no sense to me most of my life, because my world was Christian, but apparently we do, which is great now, but the Christianity in me was as real as it could be. I'm convinced of that. But along the while, in order for me to be that dedicated, there were aspects of my real identity that I slowly had to keep throwing out in order to be that dedicated, because it was just an odd circumstance, or it was just a particular aspect of who I was or wanted to be wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
I couldn't take it with me.
The template that you had adopted or had inherited.
Inherited, yes. Yes, inherited. And so when I reached my 3rd Bible college, so much of who I really was chipped away, that in the same way that this religion can't work without the person, without the healthy host, I was no longer a healthy host. So the arguments and whatnot didn't really have any power anymore. Not because of what a theist might typically think hearing this. Yeah. That it was, that's because your heart wasn't really in it, or because your sinful nature took over, or all that nonsense. No. I'm sorry, but that's just not the way it is. I know the things that I enjoyed, the things that I gravitated toward, the things that I wanted to pursue, the things that I wanted to be. I knew these things as much as anybody could at whatever age I was. Yes. I wanted to bring some of these things with me, but I couldn't. I wanted to not do certain things that didn't resonate with me, and I had to. Yeah. Because it was the Christian thing to do. Because this was a higher form of love, or a higher form of devotion, or whatever. And so when this comment was said to me that, we thought you dropped out of school, and I'm like, I would never do that. I would never do that that was the Christian in me, because that's not a godly thing to do. You have this opportunity to learn or whatever, to just drop out, to waste the money or whatever, when you don't really have a good reason.
That's bad stewardship.
It's bad stewardship. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. But now I didn't have the real me to defend and justify that.
All you had left was the script.
All I had left was the script, and I'm convinced personally that the script on its own is not enough. Yeah. It needs people who know how to be successful in parallel with it. Yes. Who know how to, or are allowed to be enough of themselves in the religion to give the appearance of this being effective.
Yeah. It's like in Ezekiel, where he talks about the heart of flesh and the heart of stone. And if you're no longer in the faith, if you're not bringing yourself to it, then you're bringing a stony heart to something that's supposed to be a living system. Because religion is supposed to be living, because it's only enacted by people. Only people can do religion. Yes. But if you don't have anything left, and you have become, and if it's not clicking, then you have nothing but a dead script. banging up against yourself. And sometimes that script can take the life out of your fleshy heart.
Oh yeah.
Right? It can do the opposite work that it advertises. Because I bet that a guy like Ezekiel was saying, because I mean a lot of those major prophets were like, enough with this religious conformity. Live in such a way that this becomes a living thing.
Yeah.
Or else it's not useful. Isaiah says, stop sacrificing. If it's not working, if it's not actually working, don't do it. Do something else.
I think this is where the person who comes into Christianity with nothing and finds something, because there is aspects to the doctrine that can help a person
create a narrative that could help heal.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It may help them to get off drugs. Yeah. The reason why might be totally different than what a psychologist might give.
Yeah.
But in general, if they feel like, okay, my body's a temple, I shouldn't be poisoning, I should be grateful, whatever, that might be enough to get them off of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean that anything supernatural is happening.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's something you can apply to anybody.
Yes.
I think we need to do a better job at understanding, again, what is actually happening here when somebody changes. If somebody comes in to the religion and is like, I have nothing, I'm an empty void, I'm more inclined to think that it's because you haven't learned how to live life in any way. You have no script. That doesn't mean there's only one script.
But here is one if you want it.
Here is one.
Yeah.
It has
it on.
It has some issues.
Yeah, it might not fit perfectly.
It might not. You might not like how certain scenes develop. You might not like what you're required to do or give up. You might not like how it ends.
Yeah.
But I don't think no script naturally means this is the only script. I don't think just because somebody feels like they're lost or because they feel like they don't know what to do with themselves or who they are or that they have no purpose in life, that doesn't mean that there's only one purpose in life. That doesn't mean that there's only one answer to that.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for somebody to take that route, though, and for it to make total sense because it changes them.
Yeah.
And it's easy to keep religion going because there are people who say that it changes them.
Yeah.
And has changed them. But you just can't escape the fact that it poisons some people.
Yes.
You
can't escape that.
This is a problem, and it's not enough to just say we were just doing it wrong.
And it's not enough to say not all Christians. Let's look close. Yeah.
So
very,
it
very
stopped
close.
like making sense.
Yeah.
Is that like?
So it started off with me realizing that what was probably the most important thing to me as a Christian was that it was real. Was feeling like it wasn't and it was my fault because I was doing things for the wrong reasons. So I wanted to make sure that when I actually put my heart into it, I was putting my heart into it for real, that it wasn't just me doing it because it was the Christian thing to do, that it was my identity that was doing it too. And in that stepping back, which was a total disaster because I had no support or understanding from the Christian community, I started to learn, it was difficult, but I had to learn how to listen to myself again. I had to learn who the hell I was because I had no idea. I had discarded so much of who I really was for this Christ-like character that there was no Phil anymore. There was just a shell of him. It was just a shadow of him. And so when I was like, okay, I'm going to step back, I'm going to put you here, Christianity, and I'm going to put you here, identity, or whatever I think you are. I'm like, okay, I need to figure out, okay, which one is doing the talking here? And which one should I listen to? And are you able to talk to each other? Is this actually happening? Or is it just one that's saying something and the other is saying, yeah, I'm saying that too. Is that true? And this is what I was trying to figure out for years. When you invite me somewhere, you want me to do something, or I feel the desire to do something, or whatever, which one is saying this?
Yeah.
Is it the Christianity, the programming, or is it who I really am? And if it is who I really am, is there a right and wrong with all this stuff? I had to figure this out. And in doing that, I found that there were certain because now I didn't have sort of the recycled sermons and ideology that was constantly telling me the same thing, that it was always going to be the same way. It took a while for me to just sort of stop that and to turn that off so that I could hear this conversation I wanted to have with myself about these two things. Because it was just so easy to be like, no, there's a verse for that. Yeah. Or I heard it this way, or this is the way people follow it. Like, no, I've had enough of that. I know what that's about. Okay, I'm just putting that here for now. I just need it to shut the hell up, so that I can just like, okay, if there's two sides to me, if there is two sides to every person, if there's who they really are, their natural identity, their core self, and then there's this religion that they want to attach it to make change or whatever. Okay, who's doing the talking, and who should I listen to, and can you actually work together? Are there two things?
Yeah.
Or is it just me? Or is it just religion? I don't know, but I need to figure that out. So in doing that, I found that there were certain things that didn't make sense to me anymore. And it started off with just kind of maybe the more trivial things.
Okay.
It was it might have been like, well, sex before marriage is not trivial to Christians, but that was like one of the first things I wanted to address, because this was a real dilemma.
Yeah.
As we were talking about with pornography or whatever, suppressed sexuality, isolated. You know, you're taught to see women or your potential partners as your sister, and so I'm like, okay, something is not right with this.
Yeah.
And I need to figure it out for myself, and I did biblical studies on it. I did word studies. I got my concordance out.
Remember them word studies?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, okay, what is the original Greek word
for sex?
What does it mean for this particular context? What is it actually saying? How much have we read into this text?
Yeah.
How much have we just sort of bent it a little bit to include this other aspect of sexuality today?
Yeah.
And I gathered that basically premarital sex, well, for one, it's a concept that isn't ever really mentioned. Not in the sense that we do today.
Right.
It's not. Sex before marriage is wrong necessarily. That's not really how it's dealt with, because
that's not it's a different culture altogether.
There was no courtship back then.
Yeah.
It was just get her to me to wife.
Yes.
And that was
it's a business thing.
Or it's rape.
Yeah.
Or they're the same thing,
yeah.
basically. So of course it wouldn't be mentioned, and this is odd to me, because again, if this is supposed to be this this eternal book with eternal wisdom that can last through the ages, why wouldn't you address this huge global epidemic of people always wanting to have sex before marriage?
People always want to have sex,
and so you go to the same verses like basically get married so you don't burn with
lust. Yeah, which is a great romantic
isn't
story.
it? It's a great reason to get married.
I promise to be with you, because otherwise I'm going to be so lusty. Oh my. You wonder why Paul was never married. He's probably writing the worst letters to
he was on fire.
I'm on fire for you.
Oh man. Burning
put me out.
So yeah, I looked at verses like that, and I was just like, you know what? At the very most, all I could say biblically was that sex before marriage was not, maybe not the smartest thing.
Yeah.
That was the most that I could gather. Words like fornication were often used, but fornication seemed to be actually related to prostitution.
Yeah.
Not necessarily just sexual
having sex with somebody.
Yeah. I don't know how we blew it up into that, but this bothered me. It bothered me because this is such a serious topic. I've been dedicating my life to living a certain way. Why am I so adamant about something so ambiguous? And this reminds me of something else about KLBC that really bothered me years later, when I learned the truth about Martin Luther, one of the early church fathers, about him being an anti-Semite.
Yeah, a little bit.
And his publications being eventual encouraging rhetoric to Nazism.
Yep.
What the hell? It wasn't necessarily to me that, like, because if I would have known that, I wouldn't have, I would have thrown out all Christianity or whatever. It's the fact that this wasn't mentioned.
Yeah, that we weren't honest with some very egregious sins. So like even a guy like John Calvin, who had Michael Servetus murdered when he came, because Michael Servetus was a Christian, but not a Trinitarian. He didn't believe the Bible taught the Trinity, which makes sense because it's certainly not a foundational doctrine in the Bible, but whatever. He came to Geneva. Calvin had him executed, and he wrote a letter to some magistrate saying anybody who thinks that we should be lenient to this kind of a blasphemer is a blasphemer and deserves a blasphemer's penalty.
Right.
And this was going on around the time in Pakistan. There was a bodyguard murdered who he was supposed to be protecting because this person was also advocating for clemency to apostates, because it's a capital crime to blaspheme in Pakistan. So the idea was anyone who says that we should be merciful to blasphemers is a blasphemer.
Right.
Right? But this is in the Christian past too, but it's not mentioned because we still want to hold Luther and Calvin up as heroes because we look at the Bible through them.
That to me is caring about the story more than about whether or not it's true or helpful.
True or helpful. Those are the two important things. I believe that something can be helpful without being true. And it can be true without being helpful.
Tons of fairy tales and fiction are so much helpfulness in it.
And if you want to be really, really, anal about it, I've never seen a molecule of love or justice or kindness.
Right.
But us telling the stories is very, very helpful about love and kindness, and because it creates real things.
Yes.
But if we just refuse to look,
what does it mean? What does it mean that our approach to this thing, that for whatever reason, we don't want to give this whole picture.
That we don't want to air our dirty laundry.
Or we don't want to just leave people to figure it out, or let people figure it out. Like, we're okay with people finding that out. If you really, this is another thing, like if you were so adamant that what you believe is true, and you're so convinced of it, why are you so afraid
Very protective.
Everything that can take you away from it? If it really made sense to you, you would have no fear.
Put it on a stand. Put a spotlight on it. I dare you to try. Because many preachers speak with that kind of rhetoric. Well, how do you defend the Bible? The same way you defend a lion. Let it out of its cage. And it's like, that sounds great.
Yeah.
But then you try it.
It's not quite the same, is it?
But it depends on really, I guess, what you mean. What is your goal when you're trying to figure, because I think that the difference between what is true and what is helpful, it's important to balance them both.
Yes.
Because even if nothing in the Bible, even if nothing in it is true, can we get something helpful out of it? Some people do. I don't know how to do it myself. And that's what the Year of Living Christianly is all about, really. To find, really, what are some nuggets in here? Because I remember being served in some ways by some power in Christianity, right?
Yeah, you were saying that.
And then I OD'd. And then you saw me come back at Bethel. Guys!
Strung out, clearly in need of a fix. You were saying that you didn't experience the same sort of
hurt.
The
system didn't at least explicitly hurt me like it hurts. But the thing is, most people who come out of evangelicalism have very specific, clear, explicit stories of where there was a systemic part. There was a part of the system that injured specifically, traumatically. I can tell you a story about it, sort of thing. I don't have that. I don't have that story because I wasn't hurt until, except maybe in a passive way from the outside. But again, that was because I was vying to be one of the authority. It sounds so mercenary that I was going to be an authority in the church, but I was trying to play a role that was, I don't know.
Let me ask you, do you love your kids?